You've got big projects to tackle, but your day gets swallowed up by repetitive tasks and constant inquiries. It's hard to make progress when you're stuck putting out fires. That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. Acting like an extra set of hands, you get your time back for the high-impact projects. Ready to reclaim your time? Visit element451.com/AI team to learn more.
Welcome back to The Hidden Gem. This is your host, Maya Demishkevich. The topic of today's podcast is storytelling. Storytelling in higher education is more than just a buzzword. It's really a powerful way to connect students, families, and communities to the heart of your institution. After all, facts tell, but stories sell. And when done well, stories can inspire, engage, and drive action. So, in today's episode, I'm joined by Liz Cooper, Associate Director of Public Relations at Mass Bay Community College, to discuss the top mistakes to avoid when telling stories. Liz shares her experience on crafting authentic narratives, building trust with students, and ensuring stories resonate with audiences across platforms. If you like today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a review. It will mean a lot. Let's get started. Welcome to The Hidden Gem, your go-to podcast that shines a spotlight on the strategic role of marketing and communications in shaping the future of community colleges. I'm your host, Maya Demishkevich, CMO at Carroll Community College. Every week, I sit down with community college leaders and industry experts to unpack strategies that work. We'll discuss practical insights and success stories to help you elevate your institution's profile and achieve your strategic goals. Tune in to amplify your community college's success, one conversation at a time. The Hidden Gem is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. And let's get started. Welcome back to The Hidden Gem. Today we are diving into one of the most powerful tools in public relations and marketing, and in my opinion, it's storytelling. And joining us today is someone who I think truly understands the magic and the mechanics of community college storytelling. Her name is Liz Cooper, and she's the Associate Director of Public Relations at Massachusetts Bay Community College. Liz, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to be with you.
I'm very excited to chat with you because I've seen you present at different conferences, and your presentations are always engaging. You always share a lot of great tips and practical advice. So I think our listeners today will find your experience and your insights very valuable. So I want to start with storytelling as a term. So I feel like we hear storytelling all the time. And in my opinion, it's really become overused. I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's almost like a buzzword that starts to lose its meaning because people use it to talk about just sharing information or sharing facts or testimonials. And those are not really stories. So I wanted to ask you, in your experience or in your opinion, what is a story? And maybe why stories are important in general in community college marketing and maybe for you personally.
I couldn't agree with you more. I definitely think the buzzword storytelling has been overused, and people tend to use it when maybe they're not actually a storyteller. They're, maybe fall under a different category, but storytelling is an art that you put together words and visuals and human experiences to really pull at the heartstrings to maybe get your message across, and capture that human emotion to for people to understand what your product or your college is about. And I think it is one of the most powerful ways to get the community college story across to people that may not know or understand what community college is or does for people. I just feel that putting together a story is such a privilege for us to tell someone's story, that has come to the college. And so I believe that having a storyteller on campus is the best way to inform the public, maybe your legislature, prospective students, guidance counselors, those gatekeepers to the prospective students about what we actually do and how we change lives. And I think it is essential, for community college to keep those storylines going and really highlight our students. Our students don't get the recognition that they deserve, even though we work very, very hard doing it. There's just so many wonderful stories to tell. And I just don't think there's enough storytellers throughout the United States at all community colleges to tell our stories, on a national level. It's essential for us to tell those stories. And it is an art to put it together.
Right. No, I can't agree with you more. And that's why it makes me so sad that storytelling is becoming such a buzzword because it
Mhm.
starts to lose its meaning. So many people call themselves, I'm like a chief storyteller. But really, there's only a few that I've met that really excel at telling great stories. So I see more mistakes than I see great stories out there. Let's talk a little bit about those mistakes that we see. What are some of the things you notice that maybe community college marketers and communicators are not doing that they should be doing when telling stories?
I think the biggest takeaway is always be authentic to that student. I'll focus on student stories, but whether you're working with a faculty member or a staff member, I think you need to be authentic to their voice and authentic to their story. What a lot of people in public relations, marketing, communications fall into is we're hired by the college to raise the profile of the college. But I want you to put your marketing hat aside for a little while and focus on actually telling the story of the student, um, because they're the ones that are going to authentically tell what it's like to be a student. You're not doing any justice to anyone if you're fluffing up a story to just promote the college, because when a prospective student comes here, they're going to know. Or if you're highlighting a student and you're not doing it in an authentic way, that student is going to know. So it really can have a backlash effect, if you will, because people see through it. And I know as public relation or marketing people, we need to be putting the brand first. And I'm not saying don't put that brand first, but I'm saying really listen to what they're saying and tell their story. The college will be there, but the highlight of the story is going to be on that student. And I think sometimes we feel like we need to say, X community college, X community college. No, it's Sally or Joe or Bob or whoever you're highlighting. Focus on them. People are going to understand that the resources or the experiences that they had at that college or what helped them get over the finish line. But it is, at the end of the day, it is the student's journey. They're the ones that put in the time. They're the ones that need the recognition. So I don't think we're doing anyone a great service. I think the general public can see through that, and they think it's just a marketing ploy. And I don't think we need to be on that end of the stick. I think we have such great stories and really have them shine, which also puts the college in a great light. I can't tell you how many stories I've put out and people are like, "Oh my god, I read this awesome story." And I'm like, "Oh yay, that was something we did." It really has made me proud, but there are, people do fall into that trap I have to follow the brand. I have to put the college first. So, student
Yeah.
first,
Yeah,
student
I
centric.
I agree with you. The brand is not the hero. The brand or the college plays a supporting role
Yeah,
in the hero's journey. We are almost like the guide or enabler in the background, but the hero should be spotlighted, like you said.
right.
Um, any other mistakes you see that community college folks make?
So a lot of community college folks have a journalism background, have been journalism, majors or worked in the field as reporters. And as a reporter, you never show your subject your story because you don't want them interfering or having any say in changing quotes or maybe rethinking what they had told you before. That's the reporter hat. So put your
Mm-hmm.
reporter hat aside. And I always run my stories by the students. And when I start speaking with them, I always tell them you're going to see this story before it's final. A lot of them are very apprehensive about sharing their stories because it's very personal. You're not,
Mm-hmm.
you're not just like, why did you take this math class? It's usually, how did you come here? Maybe you're a veteran. Like, what did you experience when you were overseas? You're really talking to them about something that's heartfelt and close to them. So you want
Mm-hmm.
them to feel comfortable. And if you tell them, I'm going to let you see the final product, they're a lot more willing to share their story with you. I always give this example. If you tell me your favorite color is red and then we get down to it and it's in the story and you don't want anybody knowing your favorite color is red, then we take it out. I want you to feel comfortable that you have the last say. And usually they come back and they're like, "Oh my god, it was so beautiful. It was so wonderful working with you and it's a great experience." Or if they have an edit, it's usually just a small edit like, "I have 3 brothers and you wrote 5 because I have 2 sisters." Like
Mm-hmm.
I may have taken down messy notes and reported it wrong. But again, they get to see it. So then they're really excited to share the story because they know that it's their story. They know that they've already seen it. It's not a surprise. I always used to say, nobody likes surprise news. I don't want to see my name in a newspaper and be like, I said what?
Right.
So, it's just working with them and making them part of the process. And I
Mm-hmm.
always like to tell them, I'm just the vessel to tell your story. This is your story. Let's put it together and see what happens. But I'm just the vessel. Like they'll come
Mm-hmm.
back to me and they'll start saying thank you. So I think a mistake is definitely missing that step of involving them and making them feel like they're part of the process and especially part of the final process. I
Right.
usually also let them know it's going to hit the website on this day, or here's the link, it just went live. I'm going to post it to social on this day so you can share it, tagging them or, really putting it where they want it to be seen. I like to
Mm-hmm.
work with them. If they don't want it in the local newspaper, I don't send it to the local newspaper. If they want it on LinkedIn, but they don't want it on Facebook, then that's what we do. I just try and be as flexible as possible to make them happy and proud.
Right. And there's one thing that you said that I think is really important to storytelling is getting to that vulnerable
Mhm.
emotional content when you speak with your students or your faculty and staff, because that's what really makes a story, how they felt during their journey, what are the decisions they had to make, how did they came up to where they are in life. And usually it's not easy to share. We have a lot of experiences that might be painful, but that's what got us where we are right now, and it's important to share, and that's what makes people feel and relate to that subject that you are talking about.
Yeah.
So I want to stop here for a second because I think one of the questions I hear a lot is, how do you get this information out of them? How do you ask the right questions? One thing you mentioned is creating this trust and letting them know that you will not
Yeah.
share anything. I think that's key.
Mhm.
But is there something else that you do to actually get the story out of them?
Answering this, but just taking a little step back. So when I first got to Mass Bay Community College, I went on my own little PR tour, if you will, and I met as many people as I could. And I just said, these are the types of student stories that I'm looking for that I think would be able to tell our story well. And
Hmm.
so I held a lunch and learn with some key players around campus. And it was a very low key brown bag. I think it was a half an hour. Called them in, put together a PowerPoint, and I just told them what makes a good story, what we would be looking for, and explaining a little bit of the process to educate them and what exactly I would be looking for. So I always say first, best, and only, timely, human interest story, and anything to do with ships.
Hmm.
So, mentorships, internships, anything with the local economy and business community is usually a win win. So, it was a very small presentation. And from that, it just really grew. And people started, people around campus, front facing offices that have access to students, really started sending me student stories. So,
Hmm.
that was the first thing that I did. I held that once, and I've been at Mass Bay for 9.5 years, and I still get stories all the time from across campus, from advisors, from admissions, from faculty, from staff, you name it, I get it. And in that process, when somebody emails me, hey, Maya has a really great story to share, I say, that's awesome. Can you just do a quick intro email? Because they already know Maya. Now they're connecting me saying Liz Cooper is a good person and she'd love to tell your story. So that is part of the trust cycle, if you will. So then once I get them, I start to explain the process. And I tell them, if you don't want something in, then we take it out, this, that, and the other thing. If there's any sort of safety issue that is going on, you don't have to tell me about it. You can just tell me that you don't want certain information included, and I'm happy to take anything out that you don't feel comfortable with. So part of the trust cycle is getting the faculty and staff on board and letting them know what you're looking for, and then asking for that. I call it a warm handoff, but it can just be an email saying, hey, Liz Cooper in the marketing department is really interested in speaking with you about your story. But that automatically gives an extra layer of trust. And then they meet me, and I explain to them, I'm like, this is your story. I'm just looking to tell your story. This person thought it was worth everybody's read, and I would love to do that. And if they're not comfortable with the process, then I say, that's okay. We can just be friends, and I can just see you across campus and we can just say hi. Um, very, I think I've had one student say that they weren't comfortable with it. I've had a few say they weren't comfortable with the process and then come back to me and want to share their story. But the majority of students want to actually tell their story because they're actually really proud of like all the hard work that they've put in and where they've come from, and what they've accomplished.
Hmm. One of the interesting things that I kind of realized when we seek stories, we say, come share your story. We put out those like flyers or some
Mhm.
kind of materials saying, share your story. And what I realized recently talking to one of the students is it makes them feel kind of scared because they
Yeah.
don't realize that they actually have a story. And when you say share your story, it almost feels overwhelming. And they're like, well, I don't have a story to share. Like, who am I? Like, I am just a student going to college.
Yeah.
So I started shifting how I request stories. Instead of saying share your story, we just say, hey, we want to learn more about you. Can you
Mm,
stop by and chat with us? Because that feels less threatening,
yeah.
less of kind of like involvement. I don't know. Did you notice anything like that?
So it's interesting that you should say that, because a
Hmm.
lot of times when I meet a student and I'm like, so and so said I need to talk to you. You have a great story. They don't think they're anything special.
Right.
And it makes me so sad. I'm like, of course you're special. Everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has something interesting about themselves. And then as we open up and I start talking, and I'm like, you said you had nothing good to tell me. I'm like, there are a million things here that I could write about. It is really interesting, the community college students' journey, that they don't think they're worthy of having a highlight written about them. It and I think part of my job is to also give them a confidence boost. Like, this is a good story. What you did was worthwhile. It is worth telling. People want to hear where you've come from. Like, it's important to tell your story. So it's giving them a confidence boost and telling them that they are worth it. They're just like, I'm just going along with my day and trying to get it done, which I get, but you're getting it done and you're a rock star and you need to be highlighted and you need to realize that you're worth highlighting and you're worth the recognition. There have been so many students that have gotten, very upset retelling their story, and they're like, "I'm so sorry, it's just," and it's not that it's painful. I think it's almost like a relief that somebody is interested in their story. I mean, sometimes it is very painful. And I always tell them, "You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to tell me. Whether you want it in the story or not, like, you don't have to tell me. I'm here to listen." A lot of times they're apologizing, and I'm like, "Don't apologize." I'm like, "It is a privilege just to get to know you because you're one of our students." So,
Yeah. So the lesson I learned is to try to approach students in a less threatening way,
yeah.
and because they don't think about themselves as a story worthy, or they even maybe didn't have time to think about what their story is. So it's our job to get to know them and to tell
Mhm.
them what their story is, to show them that they do have a story.
Absolutely.
Another mistake, and I don't know if you see this as well, but very often I see marketers create a story and just publish it on their website, and that's it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And they expect everyone to go to their blog or news article and read it. But that's not how people consume information. So, how do you share those stories across different channels?
Yeah, so, obviously it goes on our website, but like you said, not everybody is looking at massbay.edu. So, we want to get it out to the masses. So, I am posting it on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, asking the student where they'd like to see it. Maybe they're part of an association that didn't come up in the interview. They want it sent there. Or maybe they're a career changer and they have earned a degree somewhere, but they like their alumni office at the other school to know about it, or their high school newspaper still writes about alumni, or wherever they'd like it to go. I'm happy to send it. So that is another avenue. I also send it to the local media, and all the patches we out here, we have a Framingham source which is like a patch. I send it to the legislature. I send it to our admissions office. In the interview process, I always ask students what town they live in so I can make sure it goes to their hometown newspaper, and where they graduated high school. And then I send the stories to our admissions department so those counselors can send it to their counterparts at the high school to say, this is where your student has gone. Look at what they've done. So I try and send it as many places as possible because, like you said, people consume news and information on so many different platforms. I'm just trying to get it out to anywhere and anyone that will read it and maybe see themselves or see that this community college is a place that really supports their students, that want to see their students succeed, and seeing where students started and where they're going. And you have to sometimes be creative. And sometimes I ask people, like, where else should I send this? Like, what am I missing? We can't work in a vacuum. Really need to be spreading these stories and what we do. We can't just assume everybody knows and understands what we do because they don't. Um, so I'm always happy to say I'm not the smartest person in the room, and I'd like to brainstorm and ask for help. So, and I think that also gives a little vulnerability to us, and it makes people willing to share more with us because they're not experts in our field. So sometimes they don't want to speak up and tell us where we should be sending a story where I actually would like that information.
Right. So you mentioned sharing these stories on different channels. Another mistake I see is people share it in the same way. Maybe they write the same blurb for Facebook and Instagram, add a link, a photo, but it really needs to be adapted to the audiences who are using the particular channel, the different vehicles how you can present information on that particular channel. So it could be a carousel on Instagram or LinkedIn, or a video on YouTube, or a link to a story on Facebook, or maybe you share it in a newsletter, but you tweak a story so it appeals to an adult student versus a parent on Facebook. So it's like taking this information you have and almost tailoring it to different
Yeah.
channels and different audiences.
Absolutely. And and I should have mentioned we also share our stories with our alumni office. Part of the process is I'll ask them if they have ever received a scholarship. So our foundation knows. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right, you have to tailor it to where you're going and what audience is consuming this information. And if you don't know how to tailor it, I will say I saw an awesome NCMPR presentation at the Seattle conference last March, the national conference. And there was someone that worked on a really small marketing team, and she was using AI to generate different messages for different platforms. So
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people are like, how do you get all this done? Blah, blah, blah. I don't typically use AI in that way. Maybe if I'm stuck on like how to say something, maybe I'll throw it in there just to see what it will scramble around. But I thought that it was really interesting that she presented on it, because if you have a really small team and you're doing everything from media buying to media pitching to public relations to writing to social media to
Mm-hmm.
that might be an outlet for someone to be able to write on the different platforms and get those messages tailored. Right now we're doing it in-house and by ourselves, but it is important to speak to those different audiences and get those messages out and in front of as many people that will read them as possible.
And speaking of a small department or small team, I think people should not be afraid to repurpose the same stories
Mhm.
over time, because I see not students, marketers post a story, it will run for, I don't know, a few months, and they forget about it. Well, don't
Right.
forget, if you're like a small staff, you can develop a lot of great stories. Use what you
Right.
have. You have new students coming in each year. I'm sure they haven't seen the story if you've posted 2 years ago. So it's okay to maybe
Yeah.
update it and repurpose.
Yeah. So I keep everyone's information, their personal information. And sometimes I reach out to get a small update, and maybe it's not a full blown story on the website, but maybe it's new content on social media. Sometimes I posted it around the holidays, and who saw this? Maybe I'll repost it, and you just do it under the hashtag ICYMI in case you missed it. um and put the student stories back out there.
Hmm.
It doesn't hurt. And the follow up, with reporters, these small newspapers are craving content. Usually when I send them a student story, they print it as is with a photo. I always send photo. I know we talked about photos and videos and making sure you're hitting all these different mediums. But I never send a student story without a photo. Maybe it's a photo of them in action. Maybe it's a headshot. It all depends. Again, it's working with them to make sure that they're comfortable with the photo that you're putting out there. People are very sensitive about photos that are released because we're in such a digital age, but it's updating and releasing it. And usually it takes 2 minutes. Hey, I just wanted to check in. How did that internship go? Oh my God, it turned into a full-time job. Tell me more, and it's a quick a quick update on social, and again linking back to their story. If you want to read the full story, you can, see it here. Um so I think that's so important, Maya.
One thing that's interesting and we are starting to explore is our videographer had this great idea of, we're shooting the story about a student. Why not get their parents or advisors on the story to add a different perspective, almost like a
Mhm.
different dimension? So
Yeah.
it's not one-sided story. So we're trying to integrate community and faculty and staff into the storytelling process. So we haven't done anything yet, but I'm very excited about this idea because I don't see that a lot. And I
Yeah.
think it could help make the story more memorable and maybe stand out a bit, because I feel like all the stories in higher ed kind of start to look the same.
It's true. It's a you don't wanna fall into the trap of being a formula, because you wanna keep it authentic. So we sometimes will ask, it depends on the level, when I'm speaking with a student, we'll sometimes ask a faculty member for a quote, or, a staff member for a quote to include, and when they see the final copy before it's live, they're really touched that that faculty member or the staff member said whatever they said about them and their hard work. It's really nice to see. We don't always include that because it just depends, but it's really special when we do. And I think it also helps with morale for faculty and staff, because sometimes, you do go through your day and it does feel like it's, clock in, clock out, do this, do that. It's nice because it's like, yes, you did this and we're acknowledging you. We all see your hard work. So it's nice to be recognized.
Hmm. Of course. Um, well, you shared so many great tips and advice. Anything else that we didn't talk about that you feel is important to share with PR professionals and marketers at community colleges?
Get out of your office. You're not going to meet anyone sitting in your office. I am rarely in my office. I give everyone my cell phone because I'm like, you will never catch me answering my office phone because I'm on the go. I work in the cafeteria. I'll work in the library. I'll say hi to students. But really getting out of your office and speaking to the students, the faculty, and staff, and sharing stories that you want to see or you'd love to get out into the world. So one time there was a story about an MIT student that made a 3D arm, and I sent it to our engineering department knowing that we had a 3D printer, and I said, I would love to know if any students are doing anything like this because I think it's great. And the professor wrote back, she's wonderful. And she said, "Oh no, we don't have any students doing anything like this, but we had a student make a hand." And I'm like, a 3D hand? I love it. And so we wrote a whole story about these two students that made a 3D hand. And I'm like, this is exactly what I was looking for. So sometimes educating your educators, and sending out stories like, hey, I saw this in the newspaper, thought it was interesting if we have anything like this going on.
Mm,
I think is really helpful, again, for people to understand what we do and how they can help us, because we can't be everywhere. We need helpers and to funnel the stories towards us. And not everything is always going to be a story on the webpage. Maybe it's going to be a mention on social media. But again, circling back and letting those people know, like, I think this is great for social media. Thank you so much. We're always looking for content. Keep it coming.
I love sharing an example to help them visualize what you're looking for, because not everyone understands what we do. So that's a great tip. Liz, I want to thank you so much for taking this time during your winter break to speak with me. And I'm sure this episode will be valuable to many community college people.
Thank you so much for having me, and let me know. I love a good community college story. So I'm always happy to talk.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable. Let's keep this conversation going on LinkedIn at Maya Demishkevich. I would love to hear your thoughts, questions, and suggestions for what you'd like to see next on this podcast. Remember, by tuning in to The Hidden Gem, you're not just listening to a podcast, you are joining a movement of amplifying community colleges' success. Don't miss out. Subscribe to this podcast and notifications about our future episodes. Share it with your colleagues and college leaders to help make our colleges stand out. Together, let's make an impact. The Hidden Gem is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you will like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher education technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea, and feature selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Jenny Fowler, Eddie Francis, Brian Gross, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.